Committee meeting will come to order. This is the meeting for February the 6th, 2023 to 10 a.m. in the district office boardroom. Do we have any members of the public online, or I don't see any in the boardroom?
Nope.
Okay. First up is public comment. Since we do not have any members of the public, we will dispense with that. Moving into items for discussion, review of accomplishments. Who's taking that one?
Yeah, so I didn't know if you wanted to, I didn't know if, I assume the purpose was mostly to help our new member here understand what we've accomplished, so.
Sure.
Chris, did you want to take a
Yeah,
shot at it?
I'll take a stab at it.
Director Boyd Hodgson, if you wanted to add, feel free.
So some of the items that we've completed in the P3 committee over the last several years is the implementation of an internship program. So we have a partnership with Palomar College. My counterpart over at Palomar is Jacob Sheba. We had an intern over the summer, Greg Gauthier. We had an intern over the fall, Ben Crane, and we have a new intern for the spring semester, Evan Fox. So this is a new program that we've got in place. We do not pay them, but they get college credit at Palomar College, 3 units for the class, and they have to complete X amount of hours over the semester to be here. One thing that I talked about with the previous committee was, and one of the things that Jacob, my counterpart at Palomar, noticed was, because it's an unpaid internship, it's a little difficult. They have to spend 180 hours here, and we don't pay them, and so some of them, if they have a job or something, or need a job, they don't have much ability to offset that in some way, shape, or form. And we're going to do scholarships again. I just issued it, and that's the next topic I'll talk about. But talked to the previous board about maybe we set aside one of those scholarships, $1,000 scholarships, to a Palomar student that is our intern, and then Jacob tells me that Palomar will in turn match us $1,000 for the student. So that's just a way to pay them without paying them, I guess, maybe. I did give Evan the scholarship package. That was kind of the first thing I did. First time I met him, was like, okay, here's the scholarship package. You need to submit it. It needs to be an official process. But, you know, the plan is to provide one of those.
Go ahead.
So, there. Is there, can we pay them? I mean, because what you said, that's 180 hours, it's like $3 grand. So it's $15 an hour, assumedly, like that's an common intern rate.
Yeah, it's part of the difficulty of doing that. There's a lot of insurance requirements if they're actually an employee, and the workaround was that they would be an unpaid intern. They'd get school credit, and then this scholarship idea is sort of a workaround, but it's also a thing that we can do to, you know, make this a beneficial situation.
Yeah, I think the number of hours that they're required to spend here interning is about the same number of hours they would spend in a classroom to get the equivalent credit. Because that is an option. Not every one of the students there has to be an intern. They could take an additional class, and I think the number of hours is about the same.
It is the same.
I think this is new information that that Palomar could match. This is the first I've heard of it? Is that?
It is new. In
Okay.
fact, I think I probably mentioned that they were toying with the idea, but now, as I understand it, they will match the $1,000 that we would give.
I really like this idea because it is a time investment, and we don't want this scholarship only available to the people that can afford it. You know, we want scholarship or this internship program. We want the internship to be available to people who are qualified, and that may or may not be only people that can afford to take the hit financially. So I really like this idea. What would we need to do in order to implement it?
I think the one thing we may want to consider, I gave Evan the internship package, say, you know, all you got to do is submit it and you're in the running, and I think that would be up. Director Grosset, the P3 committee looks over the scholarship applications and chooses the candidates. And I typically provide some background, what school they're going to, are they a graduating senior, did they go to one of the universities locally, are they in a water or water-related field, STEM or something like that? And one of the scholarships is targeted for Palomar, and so we could set aside that one. The other thing we may want to consider is, because this is spring and this is when we issue the scholarship program, that's when we did it last year, and I just did it again, that we may want to hang on to a scholarship for a fall intern. That may be a thing we want to consider, but that's more for the committee members to evaluate and make a decision on and recommendation on. It's Chris's thought, but it's not a policy. It's just my thought that we would hang on to one again for a fall intern.
And just a little more background for Director Grossette's benefit on the intern, or the scholarship program. The board decided, based on the committee's recommendation, to award 6 $1,000 scholarships. And we came up with the number 6 because there's 2 colleges, there's Cal State San Marcos and Palomar, and there's 4 high schools. So you'd have to be eligible for the scholarship, you'd have to be in one of the 4 high schools or a college student at one of the 2 colleges. $1,000 each. I think last time we only awarded 5 scholarships, so we took the $6,000 and divided it by 5, so they got $1,200 each. We decided to keep the pool of money the same. So just want to make sure you understood, where those numbers come from.
And to tack on to that, Ben Crane, who was our intern in the fall, actually got one of those scholarships.
Yeah.
So.
And it's not the case that we have to award one scholarship to each of those places. It just worked out that way, that we wanted to try to, in a perfect world where we have, 6 applicants, maybe they would all be from the different places, and so we're not
Correct.
bound to that.
And as I recall, Twin Oaks, which also Twin Oaks kind of has 2 schools there. One's adult education, and one is for students that are, what's the right word?
It's an alternative place.
It's an alternative
Yeah,
high school. We didn't get anything from them, even though I pushed really hard, like, hey, look, send us a scholarship application. We've kind of set aside one.
Yeah, wink,
for the
wink,
school.
somebody will get it. if
Yeah,
you just
so,
submit,
but
yeah.
we didn't get any.
Okay. Well, I think we still should try to push for that, because, those students might be some of the ones that really need it.
We do, and I'm comfortable that the counselor there did make the effort to push it.
Oh, good, okay.
My concern is that it falls on the student to actually follow up and do it, and that could be the situation, it's the effort. There is some effort, there is they need to fill out an application form, they need to get a letter of recommendation, they need to write a little summary of, what their plans are, and it takes effort.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue into the scholarship program, if you want me to mention on that. So like the general manager said, we offer $1,000 scholarships to 6 students, and it just was pushed on February 1st. The closing date is March 31st, which is a Friday, so it gives students 2 months to submit to us a scholarship package, and then once we get all those applications, I'll create a spreadsheet with information on the students, so what school they're going to, what's their major, what's their plans, and then the actual packet. And a lot of times the packet tells a lot for the board to consider on who, or the committee wants to consider on who to provide the scholarships for. So this is something new that we just recently implemented.
Yeah. Okay, good.
More conversation on scholarships? Okay. We also implemented a limit on single-use plastics. That was something that this committee did. So the whole district is aware and switched over to avoiding single-use plastics. I think there's certain situations where sometimes we may still have some inventory in stock that we're just running out, and we'll make the switch over. I think there's still a few plastic spoons around, but staff know that when it comes time, we'll switch over to the compostable kind. So that's an item that the P3 committee recently completed. And then we also implemented Pride Month. So that was put forth I think we missed the actual Pride Month because we didn't get to it, but we put it in effect after it was over, but it'll be in effect this year. So that's another item that the committee spearheaded and the board approved.
Yep, unanimously.
Yes?
Yeah, and related to that item, so the board approved, it's June, right? I believe June is Pride Month. We didn't make any specific arrangements for what we might do to celebrate this year. So at some point in time, this committee may want to take that up and figure out if there's a recommendation we want to make to the board as to how to celebrate or recognize Pride Month as, instead of just being, we announced it as Pride Month.
Okay.
Was there any other items that,
Well, it wasn't something that we initiated, but we worked on it, was the Bill Dean program. And it looks like we're going to talk a little bit about that. So,
Yeah.
That's something that has been run through this committee. And
Absolutely.
it's a great program. We're trying to get it off the ground again this year, and we have budget for it. And, it's something that I'm proud of, even though it sort of came to us prepackaged, but it's been run through this committee.
yeah.
What is the building
Oh,
program?
so I could take that one. So Bill Dean has a company, Poseidon Education, and comes up with a program he initially started with stormwater, was very stormwater related, but he has subsequently branched out into other areas, and specifically water, where Bill works with a teacher at a school and teaches fifth grade students. So that's typically the last year in elementary school these days. When I was a kid, it was sixth grade, but now it's fifth grade. Educating them about water deeply, not just, sinks and showers, but about water use at the entire school, educating them to the point that students can actually go out and do an audit of their own school and bring recommendations back to get certain efforts, procedures, modifications, changes done to the school site to make the school more water efficient. They bring those recommendations both to the district and to the school district. And last year there was an ask for us to get them some rain barrels, so we board approved getting them rain barrels, and we brought rain barrels out to the school. But it went further than that. They actually made presentations up to at the state level. So a real excellent program.
It's very
And-
hands-on.
And I'll let General Manager Pruitt share the details.
So the district's involvement was to work with Bill, and we actually funded the development of the program, the curriculum that he would develop. And then what he had to do is try to find a school and a teacher to teach the program as a pilot basis. So we worked with him on that as well. So my wife was actually the guinea pig. So she volunteered to be the fifth grade teacher to start the program. And it was an amazing program. I got to spend a couple days in the classroom to see it. The kids came here and presented to the board, and it was a really good feel. Your daughters would have loved to have seen that, but really good program. They do, like Chris says, they did a landscape audit of how's the water being used, where does it run off, how much water. They actually the students actually calculated how much water on a monthly basis they use for washing hands and flushing toilets and things like that. So real world experience that they got, and awesome program. So and this may go with the item number 3 on the agenda today, but Bill's looking to move forward with that program. So now that he's done it at one school, he wants to start doing it at other schools. So.
Okay, great. I think those are the high points. We've started revisiting, because we are the policy committee as well. We've started revisiting some policies that I think in particular were, staff wanted us to take a look at. So we've started that process, so I anticipate over the next year that we will continue with that process as well.
Yeah, and that's actually item number 5 on today's
Yeah,
agenda too, to give an
okay.
update where that's at. So.
And I think, there's no shortage of work to do. And there's an initiative that we're going to be talking about today that I've brought forward, the Climate Action Plan. So there's no shortage of work to do. So I'm happy to be back on this committee and chairing it, and I think that we're going to get a lot of good stuff done this year. So anything else before we move to the LAFCO issue?
I think we hit the high spots.
Okay, great, thank you. And thank you all for your support and your work, getting all of those things accomplished. It is it is a team effort. It's not something that can be done just from the dais, so thank you. Okay, so I requested this to be put on the agenda, and I imagine it's going to be something that we continue talking about. I don't fully understand what's going on. I've just been made aware that the landscape audit services are a feature or benefit that is provided by LAFCO to many places like our folks, our ratepayers can take advantage of this. It's being halted because I think of some internal discussions, but my understanding is that the internal discussions and the sticking points have wider implications, not just for this type of service, but for the agency of special districts. So I guess what I wanted to do is start the process of talking about this and find out if you have heard anything different, if you know of any, what sort of the ins and outs of what's going on, because I've heard a little bit, and it's complicated. So that's why it's on the agenda, and if we're not prepared to talk about it today, then we'll talk about it at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think, Chris, we're prepared to talk about it
Okay,
today, but it's
great.
probably one of those things that will evolve over
Okay,
time. So Chris
okay.
can give a little bit of background, I'll add on to it, and then we can have a
Okay,
discussion.
great. Thank
So
you.
Mission Resources Conservation District has been providing the service to the County Water Authority. I started in water conservation back in 1998, and they were the regional provider. They did it for years. When I was at San Diego, we had our own internal staff that did it, but Mission Resources has provided it for a lot of the smaller districts that didn't have in-house staff to be able to do it. They provide a really good service. I've always been really happy with them. They're always really helpful. Staff has changed over the years, but we have a good working relationship. What it appears that has happened, however, is Mission Resources service area is really up in the northern part of San Diego County. I mean, even more northern than us. So I would say it really reaches up into Fallbrook and Bonsall and comes across to the coast. But it doesn't even reach our service area, which I thought maybe I had a workaround of, hey, maybe we can just contract with them directly.
Okay.
But no, they are not in our service area. And although they have provided this service for years, as long as I can remember, since '98, there was a kind of an agreement that they would provide the services, but unfortunately, recently, Resource Conservation District, Greater San Diego County, who had previously thought this was okay, came to somebody else's attention. I don't know if it's new board members or new staff, I'm not clear, but they basically interceded and said, no, this is our service area, we provide this service. And the County Water Authority, who manages the audits, had an item to go forward with a new contract with Mission Resources, and Greater San Diego jumped in and said, yeah, if you do that, we're going to sue on that.
Okay.
And so Greater San Diego complained to LAFCO about this topic.
Okay, that's the connection.
Yes, and so, and I think LAFCO is probably the adjudicator of those types of conflicts. And I believe Water Authority staff wanted to continue with it, but, legal staff say, we're not gonna touch this one. So the workaround was that Metropolitan is providing this service. I gave you two handouts that they'll provide it for both residential and commercial. And there'll be a big announcement on February 10th, which I'm pretty sure is Friday of this week, that citizens can get this service through Metropolitan. So it's supposed to be the same type of service. We'll see. The one thing I can tell you is that Metropolitan is paying for all of it, whereas previously it was a shared cost between the district and the Water Authority. So it typically cost us about $78, the district, to have Mission Resources staff go do it, and now it's not going to cost us anything. So there is a financial benefit on that side of it. As I understand it, however, Mission Resources will still provide us the agricultural audits.
Okay.
For whatever reason, I think Greater San Diego didn't complain about that portion as they're not really geared up for that. A lot of the ag, as you probably all know, is up in
It's up
northern
here, yeah.
San Diego County. So we do have some ag customers. Alicia was out at customers filming, and he could probably use a little help. And so looking forward to get Mission Resources out to his place. So it's not a perfect situation, but it is a workaround to continue to provide customers with the service. I did let customer service staff know, hey, if we have a customer that's in a difficult situation and they need somebody to come out and help them on their property, that they've got, water consumption, and they don't know what's going on, myself, Lisa, Alicia, we can go do that. It's not something that we do every day, so we're not, the skills I learned were in the year 2000, and once you move up enough, you don't really get the hands-on. You're not really the motor mechanic anymore. But yeah, I can go visit a customer in a moment's notice. And for both of your knowledge about the district, you personally may get a complaint from a customer that wants help now, that needs somebody to help them to determine what's going on with my water bill. I'm using lots more. I don't know why. I don't know where. What is it? Myself or my staff can do that. You can let the general manager know, and I'll get out there within a day's notice or whatever. So
Okay.
just so that you're aware of that in case that comes up to you as a board member.
Yeah, and these types of services are geared towards the outside, the landscape. It's not internal water use. So if somebody has a problem with their water bill, if there's an inside problem, we may not be able to help them identify it. They may have to get hold of a plumber or something, but we can go out and look on the outside and see if there's broken sprinklers. We'll help them with their irrigation controller. Maybe they accidentally set it to go on 3 times a day instead of 1 time a day, so it's overwatering. We'll help with things like that. So I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with LAFCO and what their role is, but it stands for the Local Area Formation Commission. And really their whole role is to kind of manage these turf battles that can become, who gets that customer, right? We do it, we have well-defined boundaries, we have a map that shows our service area, so we don't infringe on Vista Irrigation or Live in Hain or anybody else. Similarly here, they have the county broken up into these 3 different service areas for these landscape providers, and I think we're in the middle of a turf battle. No pun intended, but that's what's happened, is that I think the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County, maybe they didn't have staffing or funding, so they got kind of out of the business and got complacent, allowed others to infringe on their territory, and now they're pushing back. And LAFCO gets caught in the middle. And they have to make the decision. And Chris, I guess I'll look to you for this. So it looks like MWD is proposing to do this for us now. Has that issue been resolved with LAFCO? So now you've got somebody even further away that's going to provide service that's in 2 other areas' service territory.
Yeah, and as far as I understand it, Alicia is actually sitting in on the JPIC, Joint Public Information Committee and Conservation with the Water Authority, and they're explaining this program to members today. So I'll get a report from her on how this will be rolled out. I don't believe there's any conflict because the service, I'm not even sure Greater San Diego actually really provides the service. I just think it was a turf thing.
How many?
Like again, I don't understand it all.
How many people typically take advantage of this?
So typically about 3 per month for our service area. You have to meet them and you have to be there.
Sure.
So it's got to be somebody that's got time and availability to
I
meet
noticed they
with
also,
program
or
staff.
Metro's proposing a virtual one as well, which
Yes.
seems a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
You just FaceTime them around your
Yeah.
property. That
Yeah.
seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, clever.
Yeah.
There's always other ways to skin the cat.
Yep. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that background. So in your estimation, because my concern was that there were going to be, that our hands might be tied on sort of a broader scale as a result of this turf war and the implications for, that might be extrapolated from that. Do you foresee any issues with us as a special district or special districts sort of writ large being constrained because of the way that this is playing out?
I don't think so. I'll have more information at the next time we do this.
Okay.
I believe it should be okay. I'm hoping their services are as good. It's kind of like you get used to a certain store and you're happy to go there, and all of a sudden they're out of
Yeah.
business and you got to go somewhere else, you know. How good will their service be? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the precedent, I guess the precedent is what I'm asking about. And there's, we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know, but I wouldn't want, I think we do things well here. And I think that we have good relationships with our ratepayers. And so if, for example, we were constrained in a way that modifies our processes or our relationships, that's troubling, because that's what we're elected to do, and that's what upper management staff that's everybody's job here, not another agency that is not involved.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that, we'll have to see how it plays out, but if, for example, Metropolitan's program is blocked through the SLAFCO action because it's in the middle of that turf war, we do have 3 people on staff that can do it, but then it's just going to be a matter of workload and timing. And at this point, that's unknown. But we could still, in a pinch, provide some of that service. But then it'll just be additional workload on Chris's department. And if that becomes overwhelming, then we'll have to figure out how to reevaluate that.
Maybe it becomes an internship rotation.
Yeah, this one
There's certifications.
This one kind of surprised us. It came kind of out of the blue. We had relied on Mission Resource Conservation District for such a long period of time. We never bothered to see, hey, is this actually their service area? So when it came to our attention, we said, okay, how are we going to move this forward? And thankfully, I'll say, I think MWD stepping up will help, but it could cause the next round of injunctions or legal action through LAFCO.
Okay,
But-
so we'll just watch it, I guess.
So it seems like it'll be a cost savings of about 3,000-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yep.
Perhaps one more scholarship to make 7 to guarantee that for the
There you go.
internship.
Yeah.
That's still a $2,000 savings for the district, and a new guaranteed internship scholarship, perhaps, if
For
throwing it out there.
for the committee and the board to provide direction on, sure, certainly.
Okay, well, thank you for that background, and thanks for running those numbers and putting it into practical terms. That's helpful. Okay, moving on, unless there are any other comments about item number 2. Okay, moving on to the Bill Dean Education Program update.
Yeah,
And I
Chris will
think I might be on the hook for that. But go ahead, maybe you know something I don't.
Well, yeah, there's something we know that you probably don't
Okay.
know, and Chris will give that
Okay.
update.
Yeah, so Metropolitan, who we just talked about, had an innovative conservation program grant. It's sort of specifically set up not just for agencies, but for the private sector as well. And as I always saw it, it was always implied that, if you partner, that there's additional benefit to partnering. And so I pointed this out to Bill Dean, hey, look, they got an innovative conservation program grant. Why don't we have your school education program be submitted? And I can submit it on behalf of the district, but you as my partner. And so Bill did a lot of homework and came up with a submittal, and it was good, but we didn't get it. So we had asked for $50,000 from Metropolitan for this program, and we didn't get it. So
Yeah.
that's a little disappointing, but it just is what it is. And they have a lot of grant proposals to look through, and we just didn't get it.
Well, that's unfortunate, but thank you for trying. Thank you for that effort, and I know that it's not easy to put together a grant proposal, so thank you for trying that. We do, that would have alleviated the burden that we had already planned to pay for that program. It is in the budget, and as far as I know, we have not finalized in partnership with Double Peak School just yet, but that's correct? Okay.
That's correct. Bill is still having trouble getting a
Okay.
teacher and classroom selected.
Okay, all right, so I can take that as an action item to try to move that along a little bit. Any other comments about that? Okay,
No, there is I don't know if urgency is the right word, but April is the month that they usually
That's
do
what I
that
thought.
program, that water program. And they follow the state curriculum and kind of they set aside April as that kind of water conservation and water education component. That's what my wife did last year, so there's a clock ticking.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for that nudge. Okay. Item number 4, event to recognize former board member Margaret E. Betty Ferguson and the 1946 Jeep CJ2A, which I'm happy to see is now in our lobby.
It is now in the lobby. The,
Chris is very happy. It's taken him 4 years to
I
get
know.
that Jeep
Yeah.
in the lobby.
I've been hearing about getting that Jeep into the lobby
Yeah.
for a long time.
and just the whole fun of it actually fitting through the doors and shoving it up the stairs, and it was mostly the maintenance services crews and the construction crews.
Do you
that
carry it? Did folks carry it up
We
the stairs?
pushed it and pulled it,
They put plywood down. and
Okay.
yeah,
Tied a rope for safety.
Okay.
So it wouldn't roll over anybody.
Yeah.
yeah.
And they pushed it.
Very old school, but
Yeah,
yeah, it worked.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And
Good.
one of those moments that I think all of us that did it will remember. It was really fun. We had a good time doing it. It was fun. But on a different topic that's not so fun, former board member Margaret Betty Ferguson passed away in December, and she was on our board of directors for a very, very, very long time.
She was elected in 1979.
Yeah. She, when I was here, I can't remember if it was the general manager or assistant general manager, but pointed out to me, hey, she made this place what it is. And she was city clerk over at the city of San Marcos. Yeah, city manager emeritus, right? And, kind of well-known throughout this community. But she had been in the Women's Marine Corps, and she loved that old Jeep, and she used to want to drive it in the parades. And so there was this effort to update it. It used to be, originally, it was made in 1946. We purchased it, the district, in 1959. So it was already 13 years old when the district bought it. And it's vehicle number 9 in the inventory. So the staff tell me, the old salts that have retired, that it was really the first vehicle that the district had purchased. I don't know whether that's true or not. Maybe they had rented things before that. I believe there was other pieces of equipment, maybe backhoes and things like that were, equipment number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But that Jeep has stayed here all this time. And when I have 2 Jeeps at home, and when I first came here and saw it, I was salivating. I wanted to drive it, but it's a death trap. It doesn't have any airbags. It doesn't have any seat belts. You can't adjust the seat back and forth.
Sorry, it's my child's school.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll pause.
Thank you.
You sit on top of the gas tank too, if you look.
Do you?
Right on top of the gas tank.
Yep.
Tank right in.
Okay.
There's no button.
Wow.
I grew up in the Pinto era. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, it looks great.
Yeah.
It looks great. It's nice that it's there. And, I hope that that's the first sort of artifact of the district and more to come in kind of a
Okay.
historic.
So I've
Review.
drafted, this is just a draft, it's not finalized yet, but I reached out to the
Thank you.
San Diego Automotive Museum and said, hey, can you send me pictures of what you guys put up when you have a vehicle? What do you do? What do you say? And talked to them, and they sent me some pictures, and they said, hey, you kind of talk about the production, you talk about what size engine and what's the transmission and how many were built and what did they cost. And so kind of some of those parameters are along the top, like the Automotive Museum, but then you kind of drill down to this specific vehicle. So I'm trying to tell the story here. We actually put license plates on it that say Betty. We're calling the vehicle Betty now, and has license plates of Betty Ferguson's term of service here at the district when she was on our board of directors. So really, really cool. And I like to do cool stuff. But I want to make sure we have some kind of an event for it. You know, the part of it's getting it in, but I want to get a sign for the vehicle. And then Lisa and I are working on having a separate sign for Betty Ferguson. So there's kind of two signs there. And Lisa's getting a photo of her to put maybe in the driver's seat. Would like to have some sort of event, but really wanted to get the committee's thoughts before I started going too far down the Yellow Brick Road. One of the ideas I had was there is like a Public Works Week, and you could do this as a celebration of Public Works Week in that Betty Ferguson, obviously, with the military service and service here and service at the city of San Marcos, you know, big public servant. The Jeep was also a public servant, you know, it was carrying equipment around for the district. My point on that makes me a little dismayed is it's way at the end of May. It's like May 21st, which seems like a long time. So not sure I want to wait that long to have some sort of an event. So would like the committee's thoughts on, you know, how we do this dual event where we celebrate this person, but also this vehicle here at the district, and just wanted to put it out for conversation.
Well, I don't know for sure because the records are a little fuzzy, and going back to 1955, I can only see first names of directors who were the presidents of the board. But Betty Ferguson was elected in April of 1979, and from what I can tell, based on, you know, some assumptions, I think she was the first woman elected to the board, and there have only been 6 of us. So I think it's really important to talk about her as a trailblazer, and I think that, you know, I don't have written down when she ended her term, but there's probably a way to fact check that. I mean, this was just me sort of Googling and looking on the website, but let's fact check that.
I think it was 2013, I think.
It's when Director Sinella first got on the board, because she stepped down and then Director Sinella was appointed.
Okay, and I like the idea of having it rolled into public service because, you know, her whole career, it sounds like, was built on public service, from her veteran status as well as serving the city and then serving the constituents here. I think that's a great idea. You said you didn't want to wait until May, and she was elected in April. What if we did something in April?
And there's nothing that says we can't wait until
Okay.
May.
I'm sorry, you didn't say I don't want to wait till May. That was the,
Yeah, it's
That
a
was what I
long
was picking
time,
up.
but everything could be ready with all the signs and the displays. I think it's clever. I think, you know, you want to make a tie-in, and I think Director Boyd Hodgson, you're aware, Vice President Boyd Hodgson, you're aware that Fox News has been contacting me, so I broached it with them. I think there's some news stations that would come and maybe do a little story on it, which is always fun for us. And the bigger oomph it has, the more they can get their editor to say, yeah, go ahead and do that. So
great.
if we wait until May, that's fine. I'm not mad or disappointed. I just, you know, I don't want to disappoint anybody else, that's all.
I wonder, have we contacted any members of her family?
Yes, and
Okay.
Lisa did that, and her family was pretty touched, and
Oh,
they want to come to this.
Okay.
And Lisa, who thinks of things that I don't, so you know, she and I work really well together.
Yeah.
She said, "Hey, why don't I get a couple extra license plates so we can give them to the family?"
That's very thoughtful.
So daughter and son, and they are both local enough that they can come here to this.
Great.
And we can reach out to them and say, hey, this is when we're going to do it, and this is why we're going to do it this week, because we want to have the pop of the fact that she had a career in public service. And I don't think that'll disappoint them in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. That might also determine when we can do it if they absolutely can't make it.
Truly.
Right.
Truly.
Okay, okay, I wonder if there are any other people that we would want to speak.
I don't know if you all caught it, but we did a social media post on this, and a lot of stuff came out of the just out of kind of nowhere, where people that follow us on social media but maybe don't say anything actually did reach out to us about, you know, their own stories.
Okay.
It's in here about how they need to go out to South Lake back when that was a reservoir, and like, I guess the rains were really bad, and we've all seen what rains can do here. And it's at the bottom of the story here where like 7 of our trucks got stuck out in the mud trying to get to South Lake, and they were almost lined up like a parade. And somebody was like, well, let's take the Jeep. And so they got in old number 9, and old number 9 could get them out there when every district vehicle could not do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it brings up the question, you know, what are we emphasizing, or are we emphasizing both? Are we emphasizing like
I
the
think
service
it-
of the vehicle or the service of Betty Ferguson?
My thought is to really do both.
Okay.
You know, and Betty wanted to drive it in the parade. I don't think I got to that when the phone call came through,
Yeah.
but she used to want to drive it in the parade. That was a big deal to her.
Yeah.
The sad part was they put a wreath on the front. The vehicle's a 1946 model, and the way the cooling system works on an older vehicle, it wants to move, and driving it at 2 miles per hour where the radiator's kind of blocked part way.
Oh, gotcha.
It overheated and it died, and that's so fun to have the district vehicle die right in the
Yeah.
middle of the Christmas parade, and
Right.
so that's when it kind of went into that mothball status.
Okay. What about, you know, because I know that we've talked about having kind of a museum, and that might be kind of an overstatement, but you know, an area where we include artifacts. Is it possible to bring it all together as one thing, like the unveiling of all of it? Or that might be too much, too quick?
The general manager and I have talked about that a lot, and we do want to do that, but it takes time and effort to get all the things that we specifically need.
Okay.
And I think this may be a work in progress of our lobby, where, you know, at a certain point in time, a display that we get put out there, like a meter or something like that, the technology may change and we may remove and replace. It'll always be like like, you know, Disneyland, they keep updating stuff. So this is kind of the first step, I think, and I think this is, you know, piece number 1. This
Yep.
is the first item
Okay.
we're putting in here, and we'll move forward from that, but I think it's a long time
So
coming.
this will be displayed as a placard in front of the Jeep?
Yes, just sort of like the other stands that we have
Yep.
up front that says like, customer service is that way and
Yep.
engineering's that way.
Is it possible to have one dedicated to Betty, a separate one? as
That's
well?
that's the exact point, is that there's one for the vehicle, there's
Got
one
it.
for Betty
Perfect.
Ferguson,
Great.
and we actually have the photo of her in the Jeep.
Love it.
But, you know, there's details I need to get, almost, you know, I want to say this appropriately, but there's stats on Betty Ferguson, you know, that I don't have dialed in just yet. When was she born? Where did she grow up? Who her
Yeah.
parents were?
Yeah.
There's all that kind of background detail for her as well that we need to collect to tell the appropriate story for Betty Ferguson.
Yeah.
But you're
Okay.
right on target.
Yeah, I love this. I think that it's fun and it's appropriate and yeah. It's cool. Yeah, it's cool. Okay.
We don't
Great.
yet know what the event looks like. Is it
Yeah.
just something we do right before a board meeting? Is it a standalone event on a week? I don't know, but those are the details we'll work through.
Yeah, and if you want to provide any thoughts on that, I'm really open. You know, there's parts of me trying to say like, you know, what sort of refreshments could we serve? You know, is there a way to make it kind of almost like a World War II-ish type thing? I'm not sure. Is it automotive driven? Are we drinking from motor oil containers? You know, there's all those fun things to add in, and if you have any thoughts, love to hear them.
I think we make it an event. I think we do invite the press. Sounds like we've already gotten a start on that. And, you know, the event that I'm comparing it to is, the dedication of the McDougal building,
Yes.
right? I mean, that was a fun event where we had folks that gathered around, they shared stories, and I don't see why we couldn't do something similar. I think that would be absolutely appropriate. Is that sort of what you were thinking?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Her family will be a big part of it, right? So
Yeah.
you mentioned before, we want to make sure they're available and willing to participate, and we don't want to steal her memory and run with it. I want them to be on board with everything that we do going forward.
Yeah, and we might want to consult with them a little bit too, what their vision might be,
Right.
because they might, they know her the best. So.
Yes, there may be a specific dessert item that she was partial to, and,
Yeah.
let's serve that.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Right.
We could get some of those. REI sells them. They're not cheap though.
Thanks.
That's great.
I'm super happy with it.
Yeah, it really is special, and I think it adds an element, it adds an element of public interest to our building. Come look at the Jeep. It's great. Okay, well, thank you for your work on that. I may have misspoke. I said that Betty was elected in April, but that's just the first record of her showing up on documentation in April 1979. She may have been elected earlier, but
Yeah,
this
and that's
is-
the homework we need to do, because you only
Yeah.
get one chance to do it right. You want to make sure it's well-researched and
yeah,
put together
for sure,
properly.
for sure. Okay, all right, moving on. Prioritized list of policies and timelines.
Yes, I'll take that item. So, again, for Director Grosset's benefit, early on, probably 2 years ago, when Director Boyd Hodgson first got on the policy committee, we had a lot of discussions about updating things like policies, ordinances, resolutions, practices, those types of things. We had developed some lists of things that staff thought needed to be updated, and we've taken some of them through the committee. Some we've completed, some are in works in progress, some we haven't really initiated yet. It's something that's probably never going to be done. It's one of those things you just have to keep going through. We went through probably a period of 4 to 6 months where we haven't made much progress. Other things were happening, so we need to staff needs to refocus on this. So my recommendation on this is that maybe at the next meeting we can come forward with a list of the ordinances and policies, practices we want to revisit. There may be a few specific things we can actually put on the agenda, and we can tell you the status of them. And then the other part will be just a schedule of what we will be working on next. So we weren't prepared for this meeting to get into depth with any of them, but at next one, maybe we'll give you an update on where we are on a lot of the items, tell you about what we're focusing on next, and maybe get other thoughts from the committee as to is there something you think we should be looking at. It's a very broad thing, so I mentioned things like policies, ordinances, resolutions, but it's really anything you can think of, the way we do businesses. Is there something we should be doing differently? And I think it would all fall under this category. Like I said, next time we'll try to be brief, because this could take 2 hours just to go through this, and that wouldn't be the intent. It'll just be a brief update on what the item was, what the status is, kind of next steps. So are there any specific questions? And I know that's kind of a vague concept for Director Grosset. You're not aware of any of these in particular.
No, but every organization has internal policies, guidelines, training, everything. In the private sector, there's a really cool piece of software called Notion, which is kind of like Wikipedia that the company uses, and it's kind of like a living document of all of these policies. It's constantly being revised, and it tracks the changes for you, and so it gives you a really solid foundation for not only policies and procedures, but also training manuals, new employee onboarding, stuff like that, and it's all very fluid and easy to use, and like I said, very transparent and trackable. So perhaps something that may be useful for the future here as well. Notion, yeah.
Yeah,
I wrote
thanks
it-
for that. That's
wrote
really
it down.
interesting. We do have all of our policies and resolutions listed. They've been digitized, and I understand that was, that required effort to get them digitized because they date back to, 1955, and, OCR has only been around for so long. But having something like that to onboard new directors, which is also something that we've been talking about, training for new board members would be really helpful. That's something that I've been pushing,
Yeah.
to have some kind of manual, to have some kind of documentation. And that will most likely come through this committee because I've been pushing it. So something like having it digitalized would be really beneficial rather than being handed a binder. That would be good.
Totally agree. As someone who's going through the process right now,
Yeah.
it would very much be beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're in the process of that board orientation handbook. So we already have one. We're updating it. You'll be the guinea pig. Directors Boyd Hodgson and Pennick didn't get the opportunity. It gives that COVID era, right? We couldn't get together and walk you through that. We're making a fundamental switch. It used to be like a 3-inch binder. Now it's going to be a very short thing with a lot of links. Go here if you want to see that, right? So we're not printing gobs of information. Nobody wants to carry around a 3-inch binder. So, but things like that. And then we'd love to hear your feedback as we go through the orientations to see how helpful it was. But there's a whole range of things that are on this list. I'm looking at a list that you don't have in front of you, but a whole range of things we're talking about. Most of what this committee does is make recommendation to the full board for things that you want to see changed, right? So if there's something this committee wants us to look at, staff will do the background. The committee will hear it and then hopefully get a committee recommendation, then we'll take it to the board, and that's when the change is actually implemented. Sorry?
We have one item that's gonna go to the board probably before next meeting.
Okay. Yeah,
But,
so,
but that's not even really codified, right? We've sort of thought that's probably the way things should work. And, you know, sometimes we bring things to a full board vote, sometimes we don't. And there's not really set criteria to determine what, we sort of think if it's something that that people might have differing opinions about, we bring it to the full board. Or if we think that people might want to participate in the discussion, or for example, the idea of our scholarship has been kicking around for a long time, and for whatever reason just never was implemented. But we brought that to the full board as a courtesy because it was Hernandez that came up with the idea, or at least has been talking about it. So we don't have like a flow chart in place or a process, but having that in place might be beneficial so that we can know what the guardrails are. So that's another opportunity. Any other comments about?
that's it on that.
Okay, great. Okay, climate action plan initiation and planning. This is something that I, in particular, wanted to bring forward to start the discussion. I imagine it'll be an ongoing discussion. One of the things that I learned at Aqua is there are water districts that have successfully developed climate action plans and are implementing them. There are, of course, people that are happy to take our money to do this for us. There are extensive ones, and there are ones that largely capitalize on what districts are already doing. And so what I wanted to do today is bring forward the idea and talk about, how we might start something like this and what might be the steps. Maybe we don't even know the steps just yet, but I wanted to put it on people's radar. This is something that I feel very strongly we should do. And I don't think it has to be a heavy lift from scratch because we're already doing things that we could formulate into a plan to track our goals, formulate goals and then track those goals. And we are going to have to do this anyway. It looks like there will be legislation coming down that says we have to do this anyway, even though we're not bound by, AB 52 and Senate Bill 52 just yet. But that's coming. That's what all the people that know are saying. So what I did was I asked Anthony to print out, and he did such a great job. It's very nice and colorful. This is the Coachella Valley's climate action plan. If you look through it, you can see that a lot of this we could write right now. I mean, it's like a 70-page document, but it's got things like, why would we want to do this? We could write that right now. Where are we expending greenhouse gases? Well, we may or may not know that, but there are ways to find out. So I feel very strongly that we should start talking about this, and I don't know exactly how this would or should go. There is probably an expense associated with it. The good news is there's money available in the form of grants from the state and the feds. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We know that it's been done in places like Coachella Valley, San Diego County Water Authority, Metropolitan. They have these. a group, I have spoken with a member of Rincon Consultants who helped put this together, just to get an idea of what the process was like. And they also were at the Aqua Conference where I first learned about this. San Bernardino has also put one together. And it's a living document. It varies by the district. And again, a lot of these folks that have put these together, they started with the things they're already doing. And we're already doing stuff as well. So I don't want this to feel like it's a giant ordeal that has to be, started from scratch. I don't think we have to start from scratch. And I think that we can look at resources to see what has been done. So that's my tee up. And I'm interested in your thoughts. Like, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I guess I would start by saying, so let's assume that there was legislation that required us to do it. What staff would typically do is we would formulate something and we would put it into our CIP. Because we know this is something that's gonna be a big work pill, it's gonna be significant amount of money, we'd put it into the CIP, and we'd get board approval, and then we would go act on it. We'd probably get a consultant for something like this. You're right, there's a lot of things that we're already doing that would be encapsulated in here. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's an easy haul to get to the full document. But it is a good thing for us to take stock of what we're already doing in furtherance of a climate action plan. They are a lot of work. One of the concerns about them is it does become a legal binding document. If you put a climate action plan that says, here's what we do and here's how we'll track it, you are now bound to follow through on that, even though there may not be legislation that requires it. So I think there's two things. There's the technical aspect of actually developing it, tracking it, and all of the monitoring of that. And then there's more, I'll call it the political side of things. Do we want to do this absent a regulation to do it? We're certainly complying with those things where there are current regulations. I'll give you one simple example, conversion of the fleet, right? Ultimately, we know that our fleet has to be converted away from internal combustion engines more towards non-polluting vehicles, primarily EVs. So we're doing that because there is a requirement, and the timeline has recently changed, but we're going down that path, and that's just one piece of a climate action plan. Does the district want to commit itself to other things that aren't legally required at this point? And whether it'll be 2 years or 10 years down the road that legislation eventually passes, I don't know. And even when it passes, it usually gives an agency several years to get into compliance, to develop it, because they realize there's a lot of work that goes into these climate action plans. I've spent time at cities, and cities have been required to do climate action plans for some time. I've been involved with them. It's a lot of work, but the city's net is broader because they have to deal with all the transportation aspects, right? Everything, all the cars that run through their city, whether there's, not just because they're city vehicles, but it's because they're residents and visitors that come through, has to be tracked. So I think the city's experience is probably a little broader, probably more expensive and more time consuming, but that doesn't mean that our effort won't be a pretty heavy lift for us. So this is probably a discussion, at least that kind of the political aspect of it, that would need to go in front of the board and find out where the other board members stand on that topic. And then obviously if it became a regulatory requirement, then staff would take the lead on something like that, which would still require board approval through the CIP. So James, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, so I did talk to Rincon, and I know Rosalind really well, and she introduced me to her coworker who I think gave the presentation at Aqua, and because I wanted to get up to speed on it, especially when I saw it agendized. So there's really two levels of effort. So it depends, and you're absolutely right. We are doing a lot of it, but to encapsulate it and start utilizing it, it does take some effort, some staff time to give the consultant to basically utilize it. The first level effort, he said, is really about $150,000 effort to create what we would call a lower level climate action plan. There's no requirement, but the AB 32 and SB 32 do have teeth. We address AB 32 and SB 32 within our master plan process already, but for a while it's just a paragraph, and then it turned into something larger, and soon it will end up having some codified rules and regulations that will affect the water districts. Currently, cities, counties, and wholesale water agencies, Coachella, Metropolitan, so on and so forth, have done this. No water agency has done a climate action plan that's a full. A couple agencies have done small climate action plans for specific projects as part of their CEQA requirement, but there was something that pushed them towards it. The larger effort's a $250,000 to $300,000 effort, but that is fully CEQA compliant. And if you do the fully CEQA compliant version, then you are, as General Manager Prudence said, it's a legal document, you're bound to it, but you could also get some CEQA benefit out of it. So when you do another project, you have a cap on your greenhouse gases, and if it falls underneath the cap because you've already accounted for it, then the state bills and the assembly bills that regulate that you have to do other mitigation measures are already accounted. So it ends up, you save a little bit on the back end. So you end up spending that $350,000 or $300,000 on the front end, and then every document that you do for site-specific projects, you end up saving $10,000 or $5,000 worth of effort because you've already done it in this upfront document. It's the same that we do for our master plan and our programmatic EIR. We set up an environmental document, and every project we do after that, we save a little bit because we've already done at least a cursory analysis of the environmental impacts. Definitely, there is a lot of moving pieces. What I mean by that is when you look at the fleet electrification, that is a good trigger for to roll into a climate action plan. When you look at our future master plan, that's another good trigger to move into a climate action plan. So when I was talking to the consultants, they kind of said there's two ways you can look at this. If you did an effort now, and it was more just to do it, for the political will to do it, and to get something in the books and kind of set up a good baseline where it would be an effort to basically codify and put down in the report everything that we're already doing. That would be the lower level effort, and then when you do the effort later, you could do through a trigger, whether it's fleet electrification or master plan or both. There will be some efficiencies. You could save a little bit on that. So instead of $150 and another $300,000 value, maybe it's $150 and a $250,000 for a second study. It doesn't save you that much. I was hoping he would say, oh, we could reuse that and add $50,000, $80,000. You're good to go. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way because the analysis has to be different. It has to be on-site biological and on-site pollution analysis that has to be done. At the end of the day, it's something that we definitely need to look at closer and consider, and there's some advantages to it, but the real advantages is to go both feet in at the CEQA level. The only danger in that is we're looking at, hopefully, within the next year or 2 years at the most, I'm hoping next year, starting a new master plan process. So it take us probably, they said, a good year to do a climate action plan. And that's aggressive, probably a year and a half is what the consultant told me from Rincon. And then we would start a new master plan right when we're done with that process. So the timing overlap is not ideal. The good news is the city is going in February to, hopefully, unless they stall it again, to adopt their land use for the general plan, which is a large trigger for us to start the master plan. The second trigger is SANDAG, looking at the 2020 census data and doing a new growth projection. And right now, we have no idea when they're going to do that. So we have one fairly known, that's a foundational document, and one unknown. So when I can't tell the committee here that in February, the city's going to adopt this, and by June or July, LAFCO will have their number for growth population increase. So if I knew that, I'd come here and say, hey, we should do a climate action plan, and we're going to start it when we start the new master plan, which we'll budget next fiscal year. But I can't honestly tell you that because I don't know when SANDAG will do their actual growth projection. So we'll have land use. If we don't have the population growth projection, we can't do our planning facility for what it looks like in the future. Mm-hmm. So I know that's a lot of information. I just gave you both numbers and timing wise. But as far as from the staff support, it's a lot of work, but I think it's something that we're going to do and we're going to need to do. As far as timing wise, I don't have ideal I was hoping the timing lined up better. Because to do the effort now, we would redo some of that effort. I'm hoping within a year, but then again, if Sandag never does or takes 2-3 years to do it, then the timing would be okay. So I kind of have an unknown there.
Got it. So to summarize what I just heard, it's prudent to wait to find out what happens both legislatively as well as from other organizations that would directly impact our own climate action report. Is that the general? And then politically, if you wanted to do something, starting the effort, you could, but also potentially not helpful, or at least not in a major way. I also have an idea after this, but just verify that summary is generally correct.
Pretty close, yes. It's, if I knew for a fact that we wouldn't get Sandag for 2 years or 3 years, I would say that there would be some advantages for the district to get ahead of what the state regulations would do. But then you're looking at that $300,000 effort.
Yep.
Since I don't know that timing, it's hard for me to, as a staff member, to make any type of real recommendation, because I definitely see the advantages of it when I talk to Rincon. I didn't know the advantages until I sat down and had a 30, 45-minute conversation with the consultants. And granted, they're consultants, this is what they do, but I've known Rosalind for years, working with her on many, many grant opportunities, and she would not recommend something just to get the billing, so.
Perfect. And to tie it into the seventh point here, my understanding is Chris recently made an effort to work with Cal State San Marcos on the senior business program, capstone project, which assigns 8 students approximately to help solve a problem. My understanding is it's for the vehicles you're doing it for. So it'd be really cool to see what they come up with, because I personally went through this process myself, and the output that we did for Dimension One Spas was somewhere along the lines of this level caliber of work that I'm seeing here. Now, I know that it's not going to be the same as having a very high-level bioengineer looking at it, but it could be a good beginning stone. Now, vehicles are this semester, so the spring semester, and if you're satisfied with their work, my suggestion would be letting them take a stab at doing a start of a climate action plan, which gives you kind of the bedrock of what will potentially become the official one that's down the road. Now, I'm not sure if that's what everyone else feels or likes, but it's an option, and I'm excited to see what Cal State San Marcos can do for us with that electric vehicle conversion program, and excited to find their recommendations, and hopefully they'll meet everyone's standards here.
And Dirk DeGrosset, just to add to that, when we worked on that process, the idea was to get vehicle electrification schedule based on our vehicle replacement policy and the miles that we drive the vehicle, and also get recommendations on the infrastructure needs based on vehicle use types, on what we would need to actually have enough charging for those vehicles. Originally, and we're still planning on doing it this way, if we get a good, useful product, then that would be a head start, which would actually save the district money on doing a full vehicle electrification plan, say that 3 times, with a consultant, because we need to look at as our SDG&E infrastructure as well as our actual electric. We know that our existing electrical systems cannot support it, so we'd have to upgrade electricity coming in from SDG&E and upgrade how we distribute it, so this way we have enough power to actually charge overnight.
Yep.
So that'd be the next plan, and it would save the district money on that, in that fleet conversion basically plan that we're going to be required to do anyway.
Yep,
So.
and both of these are right in their wheelhouse, and it's not just the students doing it, it's their professor who oftentimes specializes in EVs specifically or climate action specifically, and will be directing them in doing this. So I think it's a
good starting point, like you said.
Yeah, but that portion is just one component of a full climate action plan, so.
But we can
it's definitely
decide, we can decide the scope of it, right? I mean, if you look through this has 3 scopes. And it sort of says, what we're already doing, what we can control, what we can't control. And I do like this idea because, one of the primary objections that I'm hearing is the cost. For context, our master plan, how much does that process cost?
Master plan is about $1 million process. It takes about 2 years.
Also for context, the asset collection, I forget the name of that, but we're going through we're looking at our assets, we're measuring our assets, which I anticipate there could be some economies there, right? Because we're already doing that work. How much is that costing us?
Our asset management program itself, I don't know if we've gotten costs because there'll be individual items that feed into the asset management program, but in general, our asset, we have over $1 billion worth of assets, and then we don't really monetize
The data collection process, I guess, is what I'm asking about. Because I think, didn't we just approve something for $700,000, like an addition to that data collection process?
No, we got an asset management plan consultant on board, but that wasn't quite that high. I think
Okay.
the budget was more in the $180,000
Okay.
range.
Yeah, okay. So I think that there has to be some economies there, since we're already doing that. There is money available. I don't know what that process is. I know that it is staff time. I would like for us to figure out creative ways to get this process started. And I really like what Director Grosset offered. Yes, that's just one component, but, this is, it sounds like this is a project that the students do frequently. This is also like a Six Sigma Green Belt graduation project right here. So there might be some folks at Cal State that are working on that, or Palomar for that matter. I would like for us to start thinking about it. And I think that we have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity to be leaders. And, we know the city of San Marcos has a climate action plan. I looked at that earlier today. And, we would want to make sure that it's compliant with their plan. They have a water and wastewater component to their plan. We would also have to, to the moving parts comment, we would have to make sure that this is compliant with San Diego County Water Authority as well. But I would like for us to just get a start and figure it out. We don't have a timeline just yet. But I'm looking at this also as a risk management. This is a financial risk management opportunity as well. And, to me, this logically comes through this committee because it's also, it's public awareness and it's policy because we would be implementing something that's binding. But, maybe we could also work with the finance committee on this and get an idea of their feelings as well. But I would like for us to start, and we can figure out. We don't have a timeline just yet. We don't have a deadline. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But I think that this would be very, very good for the district, and I think that we are already doing a lot of things, including our asset inventory and that analysis that we might be able to fold into. The data collection baseline aspect of this, because there has to be that as well. That's where you start. You collect the data and you look at the baseline.
I think that's a great idea. I think I know we're jumping subjects, but when we look at what we're doing with Cal State San Marcos, we'll see what that product looks like. We could expand on it if that makes sense. We could also start working on, because as the committee may or may not know, we have battery electric Tesla batteries going on several sites, which are not accounted for in the greenhouse gas production on delivering water and treating wastewater. Because those are just standard numbers that cities typically use that don't have their own water or wastewater department. So we start looking at that and accounting for it on our electricity usage and the amount of basically greenhouse gases that we do moving water around, and start accounting for that and start collecting these pieces together and look at the timing on everything, because I'm hoping that there will be a crystal ball that gets clear on timing. Both City San Marcos will know by the end of February. So that timing will be concrete. It's going to be a yes or no by the end of February. And, you know, I'm still attending those GPAC meetings, just as an audience member. And then with the Sandag and the population growth projections, that's the last piece of the puzzle.
That's a bit of a question mark, yeah.
Yep, so if we know that the timing is, there's certainty on it, we come back to the committee, say, here's the certainty of timing, let's budget for this and add it to the scope and leverage all the work that we've already done or are planning to do and move forward, because the master plan process is a 2-year process, the environmental process of it is really on the back half of it. So we have time to finish the work with San Marcos, even expand the work, and finish any other consultant work, and let that be components that not only can we update the committee on, but if we need to, we go back to the board as appropriate. If we know there's no certainty, or Santa comes up and says, we're not gonna be doing a projection for a year or two, then we could come back to the committee with that information, which would be disappointing from, not just from this item, but also from our future master planning perspective, and have that discussion to say, hey, do we want to just move forward? Because then this document, it may make sense to move forward on it and do something that's higher level, that's CEQA compliant, that we could get some advantage of, that maybe, no matter what, we can leverage it in the future to save, you know, on effort, but we may get advantage of it instead of having to duplicate that effort within a year, you know, at that point. And then hopefully that would be a little bit better information so we could drive decisions on, because with that one unknown, it kind of clouds the decision-making process.
Yeah, it's an unknown, and it's a big unknown. I hear that. You know, one of the things that Recon Consultants offers is kind of a lunch and learn opportunity, and I wonder if that would be beneficial either for them to come talk to this committee, or maybe, you know, since eventually, I mean, this is a big decision, and it would, you know, involve engagement from the full board. Maybe they could come and speak to us at a board meeting. And I'm happy to bring this up at the next board meeting so that we can get buy-in. Or, you know, if Director Grosset also believes that would be valuable, then we've got our 2 right there. But, you know, maybe they could come and give us kind of a lunch and learn about, you know, particularly the finances around this and the financial savings, and maybe some testimony around, you know, how this helped districts save money in the long run. Because I think that, you know, that's a legitimate question. We're not just doing this because it feels good. You know, this is a risk management opportunity as well as a good for the planet opportunity. And I think I'd like more clarity around that. So maybe they could come speak to us about this. I think I spoke with a man named Ryan.
Yeah, it was, I met with Rosalind, and she's the client manager.
Okay.
And she was at Aqua
Okay.
also, and then, and Ryan, she had him on the Teams meeting with me, our Zoom meeting. And I believe, yeah, so Rosalind, just so you know, she's the one that works with us with the North County Recycle Water Coalition to get all the grants for the recycled water and future water reuse type
Cool.
of work, so.
Well, maybe she could help us get some grants for this too.
Yeah,
If she-
and we talked
yeah.
about grant opportunities to help offset some of the funding of it. And
Okay.
there may be some that may pay up to $75,000 or so to offset it, depending on which way you go.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So what are folks' thoughts about that? It sounds like, you know, it's a fuzzy direction, but at least we're gonna start moving forward, right?
Yeah, I think there's things that we can do, further conversations with the industry experts out there. We can try to see how the efforts that we're currently undertaking dovetail with a broader climate action plan. And I am interested in the results of the Cal State program, not just for the first phase, but maybe a second phase too. The timing to me is the question mark. We have these, I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse here, so
Right.
if there may be some benefits to wait for the master plan and other things to happen before we do the full climate action plan, but that's a ways out there. That's several years away.
The other cool thing about the Senior Experience Program is that they do a trade show at the end of the year. Most recently it was at Viasat, and so they all put on this great trade show, and it was attended by the public. So it's a great public awareness thing as well. So it lets the public know that we're working together with the community to work on these important initiatives, and gives them a chance to review their hard work as well. So it's kind of an extra that we get on top of working with them.
And I'll reach out to Rincon about some educational opportunities, and as
Okay.
we come back and re-engage the subject with the committee, we can discuss if that's something that wants to happen and timing of that, whether it's committee or board, or
Okay.
maybe initially we'll do it with staff, so, because this way staff has a better understanding of how this would help, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you for that discussion. I appreciate your willingness to entertain it. Okay, CSU San Marcos Graduate Senior Program update. We've talked a little bit about that already, but I'd like to know more.
Yeah, we've danced all the way around
Yeah.
it, but I'm going to let Chris say a little bit about it but before that, I want to thank Director Grosset, because he's the one that brought it to our attention, that Cal State has the Senior Experience Program. He brought it to our attention. I met with staff, and within just a few days, we actually put together an application and submitted it for the program, because he told us mere days before the deadline.
Good.
So, but with that, I'll turn it over to Chris, and then I'll add a little color later.
So that way. The effort was brought to our attention by Director Grosset, and I talked to General Manager and Assistant General Manager about it, and the fleet electrification process is, it's a big looming thing that a lot of us know about, and I kind of have this feeling like we all don't want to look at it. Like, we know it's there, it's like looming and it's troublesome, and there seems to be barriers that are already in place. We have a lot of big vehicles here, large size. At one point, when I have a conservation vehicle that I drive around, it's really old. It was due for replacement, but COVID came, and so we hung on to it because we were looking for cuts. But at the time, I was thinking, okay, this could be an electronic vehicle, but they really didn't even have at that point a van that was an electric model. So technology's changing and things are growing and getting better, but there's this whole burden of electrifying the fleet, but also is the infrastructure there not only to provide us the power, as James mentioned, but also the types of vehicles that we need. So it's just been this burden that we've all been worried about and knew is looming, and I don't think any of us have delved as deeply as we could or should into it, and it just seemed like the great idea. Like, let's get a group of students to do this on our behalf and answer multiple questions. What are the due dates? What are the timelines? Which vehicles need to be changed out? Which ones can be prioritized? What sort of equipment do we need to, get the whole fleet to where it needs to be? And so that's our idea. But then there's the process of submitting it to Cal State San Marcos as something that they will want to do. And I spoke on the phone with Miguel de Jesus, and as pleasant a person as you could imagine, that I'm here the day before it's due, asking to, I want to submit, and this is what I want to submit, but you've got all these fields, and what ways do I need to get these things through? What do I need to say? He was really helpful. He was on a call, probably to somebody else, but said, hey, I'll call you right back. And he called me right back, and he worked me through it, and I was able to submit it within a matter of hours, and we got notification the other day that we were good, got a draft contract, ran it through our attorneys. The attorneys say it's good, so they'll be sending the general manager a agreement, an MOU, and we will get going on this. So this is, something nice to help us out. Good thought, good planning, nice nexus there. I don't know what else to say.
Just to build on that a little bit, the cost is $1,000, so it's next to nothing to get 8 graduating seniors, approximately 8. I don't know how much the groups are variance these days, but it was 8 when I was doing it. And basically, all of them are tasked with almost 100% of their final semester with doing this project, in conjunction with their professor, which has specialized knowledge in that field. And the output is really great, this caliber of work, so I think you'll be pleased with it, as well as the trade show and exposure to these students that could potentially become employees for us as well. It's getting them exposed to the water industry that they may not otherwise have even considered. And knowing that, it now covers new things like asset management with consideration for climate and forward-thinking stuff along those lines. So I think it's a great opportunity for everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like a tremendous resource, so thank you for bringing that forward. And it's not a competition, right? We're locked in and we're moving forward, correct?
Yeah, and I just wanted to share, it's a thing that I left out. Professor De Jesus said, he told me, you need to tell the students why this is good for them to do. And the point was that this type of thing, electrification of the fleets, this is going to be your problem. It's coming your way.
Yep.
And so to get ahead of this and start to understand this and know these are the types of problems you're going to face in the future is just a really, really good thing for them to get in on the ground floor on. So
Yeah, 100%. And I'm really happy that we're engaging about this specific problem because, as you will probably recall, I've been trying to push for us to start moving in this direction. In particular, I was hoping that we would purchase a couple of Ford F-150 Lightnings, and then I would be able to drive one and check it out. But, joking aside, it's important, and, we do know that it's coming. This is a known quantity, and we're going to have to be ready for it, and it is not an easy lift, and all agencies are facing this. So this sounds like a tremendous opportunity to move in that direction and make it a little bit of a lighter lift for us, and certainly not as expensive as hiring consultants to figure this out for us. And you all could do this, but you don't have the time. So this sounds like a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think, $1,000, virtually nothing. It'll take a lot of staff time, but we'll really leverage it. I mean, the amount that we'll get out of it is way more than we're going to put into it in terms of the effort, so. Yeah, we're excited about it. Thanks again, Director Grosset, and Chris, thank you for turning it around so quickly. I do appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was an incredible turnaround.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Any other comments about that? Oh, well, I have a question. So when does it start, and how do we get updates?
So they're going to send a DocuSign to the general manager, and I asked them to remind me when they send the DocuSign. I get a lot of emails every day, and it's hard to keep up with them, and I can't even fathom how many the general manager gets. And so I just wanted to make sure that they told me when they sent it so I could go in, stand in his doorway and say, hey, they sent you the DocuSign, and our attorneys looked it over and it's good, so process that and we'll get it going at that point.
Okay, good. And then they will make presentations, I guess, to the board or to this committee? Or?
Well, initially we will meet them and give them the problem and have to provide them a lot of data.
Okay.
So
We'll treat them like we would a consultant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if we hired a consultant to do this, they'd be coming in, they'd be tapping into our knowledge base, we'd be providing them with data, there'd be ongoing meetings. It'll be the very similar process. And whatever the committee and the board feels that they'd want in terms of an update, whether it be from staff, but it'd be more valuable if it was the actual students that came forward and gave presentations.
And we've already assembled a team on the staff side that will interface with the students that, has the knowledge, the fleet knowledge, the mileage knowledge, the infrastructure knowledge from the ops side as well as asset management. So this way they can give them that information quickly. And what I found out as we were coming up with the idea of what to submit is we collect a lot of this data already. We just don't use it for anything. So now we're going to give the students to actually crunch the data and start utilizing it.
Good.
So.
Great. That's even better.
And
Okay.
what James just said is a really important thing. We're really good at collecting data, not just on fleet, but on everything. We need to get better at actually applying that data to help us better manage things going forward.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Okay, establish committee meeting times and dates, and then, adjacent to that, location of the committee meetings.
Yeah, so historically, we've met the first Monday of the month at 10 o'clock. There's sometimes conflicts, right? Like a Labor Day might be the first Monday of the month, so we'd have to move it. So we're just looking to the board to see if there's a standing date and time you'd prefer, and then location. So I think I may have sent out, maybe I didn't send out an email yet. They're going to be redoing the boardroom. They're going to be redoing the roofing in here. part of the contract with the contractor is that they have to make the room available for board meetings. The request from our buildings folks is if we can start to move all of our committee meetings out of here to let the contractor have more access to this room. So at least for the duration of the construction of the contract for the ceiling, I would suggest we do all of our committee meetings elsewhere. But what's really on the agenda is, do you want to do forever, do you want to do the meetings elsewhere? Pre-COVID, we did all of our committee meetings upstairs in the conference room. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, that was a pre-COVID. COVID kind of changed things, and is it time to go back, or are you happy doing it here? So there's kind of a short-term and a long-term question embedded in number 9 there.
You know, I'm sort of ambivalent about where we have them as long as we can maintain transparency and enable public attendance and public viewing. Because I think that's a responsibility that we have. So I'm ambivalent whether we have them here or in a conference room, but I want to make sure that the level of transparency remains constant.
And I remember discussing this at the previous P3 last year, which I know was only a few months ago, but, we're going to have the ability to record, and we're setting up the ability to have Zoom. And Anthony, I don't know if is there a timing on when that's set up? I know IT's working on it.
I'd have to check in with IT, I know it's on their schedule to
Yep.
do this.
So we will have the ability, it may not be right away, but we will have the ability to Zoom from the upstairs conference room. So this way it'd be just as much transparency as it is in the boardroom. But we do have the ability to record in the upstairs conference room already.
Okay.
And certainly, wherever we had it, the public would be allowed access.
Okay. Not that we have people beating down the doors generally, but, you know, it's important to maintain that option.
Yes.
Schedule works for me, and location, again, with Director Boyd Hodgson, that it is ambivalent to me as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And in the future, after the work's done, if the committee meetings are in the conference room, but we know there's a hot topic where we're gonna have a lot of public, we can always reschedule them back to the boardroom.
And, you know, somebody usually gets a heads up about that. Either, you know, you get calls or I get calls or something about people really being interested in whatever it is that we're going to talk about. So we typically have a little bit of a heads up. And, you know, we can make the decision on the fly too, I think, right? If we,
With notification requirements.
oh, right, okay. So we would have to specify where the meeting would be in the
Yeah.
notification.
So we could generically say at the district offices. 'Cause
Okay.
We don't always have to say in the boardroom or in the conference room. We'll just say at the district offices. And if people show up, we'll say, well, it's in that particular space in the
Okay.
district offices.
Okay,
if you wanted to
that
do
sounds
it-
flexible then.
If you
Okay.
wanted to do something like at Meadowlark for some reason, that's different. You'd have to specifically post where you're going to be.
Right, it sounds to me like that's a workaround, so that we have that flexibility in case we have an issue
Yeah.
that
So-
demands.
First Monday of the month is good, 10 o'clock is okay. Maybe at the next meeting, we'll come forward with all the specific dates, and staff will identify where there's conflicts with holidays or something else, and then maybe you can kind of bless the more formal, this is just a concept, but we'll come forward with specific dates for meetings.
Sounds good. We just recommend we send out or circulate calendar invites for this sort of stuff once it's established, so
Okay,
that way it's solidified and
yep.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments?
That's it.
for future items, should we propose them now or just send them via email to?
So future items should come to me.
Okay.
And then I'll decide whether or not they go on the agenda.
Yep.
That's part of the privilege of being the chair of the committee.
Cool.
We've never had any conflicts
Yep.
in this committee. And I would say, you know, if we're going to run with another program like we just talked about, that should also, I should be apprised of that before sitting here in the meeting. That would be great, thank you. But I think it's a great program. So whatever you would like to see on this committee,
Yep.
yeah, let's just talk about it and we'll
Perfect.
bring it forward.
Sounds good.
Okay? All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will add, had we had time about the senior program, we would have brought it to this committee before we submitted,
Yep.
but the deadline didn't allow it. So-
Yeah, it was literally, we talked about it on a Monday and it was due on a Wednesday, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that fast turnaround. It does sound like it's a great resource.
Yeah,
And
it
it
is.
sounds like a resource that we should be using any opportunity we can. Yeah. It builds good relationships with the university and, you know, like Director Grosset said, it's, you know, it's a pool. And we've done several things to try to enhance our pool of applicants in this committee. So I'm all about it. All right. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Anything else? No? Okay, we're adjourned.